On my 30th birthday, my family threw a party for someone else. Then a stranger walked in and changed me. No special tools with little powders and laughter, but none of them were for me. I sat at the front door watching my family celebrate, like I was just some random guest who showed up. Today was my 30th birthday, but you wouldn't know it. There was no language with my name, no cake waiting for me, just smiling faces gathered around someone else, their glasses of wine high. For a moment, I thought maybe they had a surprise planned, something hidden. I held on to that small hope like a child would hold on to a balloon in the wind. I tried to get through it. I tried to remind myself that it didn't matter. I was used to being background noise in my family. I'd survived worse. Across the yard, I saw my mother, Nina, smiling and adjusting the collar of my sister Astrid's new fiancé. My father, Mark, stood a few feet away, silently sipping his usual morning tea. All at once, Astrid, radiant in her perfect white dress, was absorbed in all the attention. Everyone had gathered for her today, and I, Catalia Cole, the daughter who always blends into the background, sat silently, feeling smaller than ever. I thought that would be the end of it, forgotten again. But then the wooden gate opened. A man I had never seen before walked in. He looked out of place in an old leather jacket and old boots, his face tense and searching. He scanned the passing crowd, the line of money directed at Astrid, and then he saw me. His whole body moved as if he had finally found what he was looking for. He walked straight toward me, his boots clicking. The air was quiet around us. Conversations fell into an awkward silence. He stopped a few feet away from me, prompting quick reactions. His voice was breathy as he spoke, but his words were clear. "You don't know me yet," he said, locking eyes with me. "But I'm your brother." For a few seconds the world seemed suspended in midair. Then, as if someone had dropped a match in a dry forest, the group erupted in screams, gasps, and confusion. And for the first time all day, everyone looked at me. I woke up this morning with a strange cream of hope running under my skin. It was my 30th birthday, a lamppost that felt heavy with meaning, even if no one else seemed to notice. I automatically told myself that this year would be different. Maybe they had something planned, something small but thoughtful. Maybe this time they would actually see me. The house smelled of freshly cut grass and lemon paint. When I went downstairs, the backyard had been transformed. Pastel strings snaked overhead. Tables were decorated with decorative vases of flowers set in gold-bordered glasses. A 3-tiered cake sat on a long table covered in pure white frosting, though my name wasn't on it. It was the kind of party people post about, the kind you look at and think, what a wonderful family. My mom, Nina, was in the middle of it all, arranging the platter with the frenetic energy she always brings to anything involving appearances. She was wearing a pale yellow dress, her hair pinned back, a string of pearls around her neck. She barely looked at me as I walked out. "Oh, Catalia, good. You're here," she said, not pausing in her work. Gently before people started arriving. No birthday wishes, no hugs, just another task on her list. I moved mechanically, gently, trying my best not to hurt too deeply. My dad, Mark, was sitting at the outdoor table with reports and cups of coffee, dispensing the temperature as usual. He nodded gently at me, the kind of gesture you might give a neighbor, not your daughter. As the guests arrived, they started to arrive. Family, friends, neighbors, people I barely knew. They hugged me. They shook my hand. They laughed and complimented the decor. I stood singing to the side, facing politely, waiting for someone to notice me. Then Astrid arrived. She swept in like a movie star. Her white dress billowed in the wind, her newly cut hand shrunk to a diamond ring so large that the pain nearly blinded me. The crowd immediately surged around her, panting, cheering. My mother clapped her hands together, beaming with pride. She said, "Okay," Nina announced loudly, her voice echoing over the music. "Astrid of ours is almost over." The backyard erupted in noise. I watched as people gathered around Astrid, congratulating, taking pictures, laughing, and teeing. Plates were destroyed. Maps were changed. The entire party shifted around her. I stood frozen, still holding a corner tea the torch in my hand. A wave of shame crept up my spine. Maybe it was naive to think that today would be my day. Sienna was always the sun, and I was always the moon, only visible when she wasn't shining. Today, it was more obvious under the pastel lights and the perfect sky. I headed toward the dessert table, looking for some small clue that someone had remembered. Maybe there was another cake hidden somewhere. Maybe there was a card with my name on it. But there was nothing, just the white cake with a small sign stuck to the frosting that said, "Congratulations, Astrid and Tom." Tessa, my best friend since college, had called me earlier that morning. I should have listened to her. "They should do their best for you," she'd said. "You deserve it." I'd laughed, brushing her off. Now standing alone while my family celebrated without me. That laugh felt like a betrayal. I pulled out my phone and stared at Tessa's last text. "Happy 30th birthday, Catalia. I love you. Don't let them make you feel small today." I shoved the phone back into my pocket and blinked hard against the pain in my eyes. My mother brushed past me, brushing imaginary dust off Astrid's shoulder. She didn't even notice me. Finally, I forced myself to step forward, pushing through the crowd. "Mom," I said softly, touching her elbow. She turned, startled, as if she hadn't even seen me standing there. "What's wrong, Catalia? What's wrong?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's your birthday," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It was supposed to be my birthday. Nina's mouth tightened. She sighed softly, almost imperceptibly. "Honey, you're 30. You don't have to make such a fuss. Astrid's engagement is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Try to support her." Her words were stronger than a slap. I stepped back, nodding stiffly, my heart clenching. She didn't even realize how much she'd hurt me. Or maybe she did, and didn't care. I drifted back to the edge of the courtyard, clutching a glass of diluted lemonade. I watched them pass Astrid from guest to guest like a trophy, their faces glowing with admiration. I didn't belong here. Not really. As I stood there, invisible to the people who were supposed to love me the most, a sharp sound interrupted the ceremony, the old iron gate opening. I turned and everything began to change. The gate opened with a deep, harsh sound that cut through the music and laughter. I glanced over there without thinking, expecting to see another neighbor arriving late with a bottle of wine in his hand. Instead, a man stood by the wooden posts, a stranger who looked completely out of place. He wore an old leather jacket despite the heat, and he had a wary look on his face, as if he were ready to run at the first wrong move. His hair was disheveled, a little too long, and his boots were dusty, as if he had walked across town to get here. There was something rough about him, something unsettling, like a storm was brewing just out of reach. No one else seemed to notice him. They were too busy clinking glasses and taking pictures of Astrid, posing with her hands, playing with her new diamond. I stared, feeling the air around me tighten. The man's eyes scanned the crowd once, twice, then locked on me, not past me, not near me, but directly at me. I froze. Something inside me stirred. Something deep and visceral that I couldn't explain. Without hesitation, he started walking straight toward me. Each step he took seemed to pull the world closer around us. My heart was pounding so hard in my ears that I could barely hear the soft chatter as people finally noticed him crossing the yard. Heads turned. Murmurs of questions passed between groups. Who was he? What was he doing here? The man stopped a few feet away from me, close enough that I could see the worry etched across his face. His hands shook slightly, but he kept his voice steady. "You don't know me yet," he said, loud enough for those closest to him to hear. "But I am your real brother." For a moment, no one moved. The words seemed to hang in the thick air, heavy and incredulous. Then chaos erupted. Guests gasped and hugged each other. A woman near the dessert table dropped her drink. My mother put her hand to her mouth in shock. My father rose from his chair so quickly that it scraped against the flagstones. Astrid let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh, looking back and forth between me and the stranger, as if she were waiting for someone to yell that it was a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It couldn't be. I stared at him, trying to speak, trying to move, but my body refused. The words "brother real" echoing in my mind, colliding with 30 years of assumptions. 30 years of lies I didn't even know were there. My mother was the first to recover. She stepped between us, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "I don't know who you are," she said sharply. "You need to leave now." The man's jaw tightened. He didn't move. "You know exactly who I am, Nina," he said, his voice rising. "You stole her from us." A gasp rippled through the guests. Some stepped back, pulling out their phones, ready to record whatever was about to happen. My mother turned to me, her eyes wild and desperate. "In Catalia, listen to me," she said. "He's lying." He was trying to confuse me. But her voice was shaking. Her hands were shaking. I looked at my father, searching his face for some kind of anchor, some kind of reassurance that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. But he didn't meet my eyes. He just stared down at his shoes, shame etched into every line of his body. My stomach dropped, my skin numb with cold. I turned to look at the man. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice almost unsteady. "Finn Madden," he said. "You're my brother. You were taken from us when you were a baby. Our mother never stopped looking for you." I never stopped looking. The ground tilted beneath me. I gripped the back of the chair for balance. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But something inside me, something stubborn and battered, held me steady. I stared at my mother, the woman who raised me, who taught me to tie my shoes, who packed my lunch and drove me to piano lessons, the woman who seemed to have built my entire life on a lie. The crowd waited, silent and expectant, all eyes on me. I felt my voice escape my throat. I wanted the truth. Nina's face twisted for a split second before she straightened and lifted her chin, the mask of control back in place. "There was no truth to be found," she said tightly. "You are our daughter." But the words rang hollow. They fell into a heavy, accusatory silence that found no support. Finn looked at me with such a mixture of hope and pain that it tore something inside my chest. I took a step toward him, and in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. The air around me turned sharp and thin as I took my first step toward Finn. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, whispers rising behind me like a tidal wave. My family stared, stunned, unsure whether to pull me back or let me go. I stopped right in front of Finn. Up close, he looked even more real. His eyes, dark brown like mine, were red at the edges, as if he had carried too many years of unshed tears. His hands jerked at his sides as if he wanted to reach out to me, but didn't know if he was allowed to. I opened my mouth, but the questions came too fast for me to say anything. Instead, I asked the only thing that mattered. "How did you know?" Finn's voice was even as he answered, but the pain was palpable in every word. "We shared the same birthmark on our left shoulder," he said, like a crescent moon. "Our mother used to kiss it every night before bed and call us her moon twins. You were kidnapped from the park when you were 2. They said you drowned, but she never believed it. She searched for you until the day she died." I felt my knees weaken. I instinctively reached for the back of a nearby chair to steady myself. My mind raced through fragments of childhood memories. The strange scar I had always wondered about, but had been told, was a surgical scar. The way my mother flinched when someone mentioned adoption stories. The family photos that only started after I was about 3. I heard my mother behind me, her voice hoarse and commanding. "Catalia, that was ridiculous. It was a coincidence. This man was trying to manipulate you. Don't let him confuse you." I slowly turned to face her. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. Her face was pale, but her eyes still burned with authority. She expected me to obey her. She expected me to obey as I had always done. For most of my life I would have done so, but not today. Not after standing invisible at my own birthday party. Not after seeing the despair and hope on Finn's face. Not after feeling the weight of every little moment that never really mattered. I pushed my chair back and stood up, my voice stronger than I thought it would be. "I want to see it," I said. Nina's mouth fell open, ready to end, but I raised my hand to stop her. I needed to see it for myself. Finn nodded without hesitation. He took off his jacket and pulled down the collar of his t-shirt, and there was a small, perfect crescent-shaped birthmark on his shoulder blade, the same one I'd seen in mirrors my whole life. The world tilted. I pulled my collar aside and heard the gasps from the guests as I revealed the exact same birthmark on my back. Silence fell over the backyard. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. I turned slowly, scanning the faces of the people I'd called family for 3 decades. My father looked away, guilt etched deep into his features. My mother stood still, mouth pressed together, hands shaking. Sienna stepped forward, her voice uncertain. "Catalia, maybe there was an explanation. Maybe my parents had their reasons." Her words were meant to soothe, but they only fanned the flames in my chest. I looked into her eyes and saw for the first time that she didn't understand. She had always been the chosen one, the celebrated one. She had never known what it was like to be the last one, the second choice, the forgotten daughter. "There's no reason good enough for this," I said softly. The words tasted like ash on my tongue, but they were true. I turned to look at Finn. He stood there, still waiting, still making a choice without forcing it. For the first time all day, someone had given me the chance to decide who I would be. I nodded. "Let's go." The gasp echoed through the crowd. My mother called my name, a desperate plea, but I didn't turn around. Finn handed me my coat. I slung it over my shoulders and followed him toward the gate. I felt lighter with each step. The house, the party, the heavy expectations, all gone behind me. I didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but for the first time in my life, it would be one I chose for myself. As I walked through the gates, I realized that I hadn't lost a family today. I had found a part of myself I never knew was missing, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me again. The gates slammed shut behind us, cutting off the sounds of the party like a door closing on an old life. Finn and I walked quickly down the driveway, my pulse racing so fast I could barely hear anything else. I clutched his jacket around my shoulders, breathing in the unfamiliar smell of leather and something warm and real that made my throat tighten. He opened the passenger door of an old blue pickup truck parked at the curb. I hesitated for a heartbeat, glancing back at the house where my entire life had just fallen apart. People spilled into the yard, staring after us, whispering, pointing. My mother stood motionless on the porch, her hands clenched at her sides, her face unreadable. My father remained at the porch table, his head bowed as if the weight of the silence had finally crushed him. I slid into the truck without another word. Finn climbed in beside me, his hands steady as he started the engine. We drove slowly at first, then faster as we left the neighborhood. The farther we drove, the easier it became to breathe. The sun sank low in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. For a while, neither of us said anything. I stared out the window, watching the houses fade away, each a reminder of the life I thought was mine. Finally, Finn broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You deserve so much better than this." I turned to him, studying his sharp teeth, the sadness etched across his features. There was no show, no manipulation, just a brother who had lost something and spent years struggling in the dark to find it again. "You're just a kid," I said. "You had no choice." He gripped the wheel tighter. I never stopped looking. I'd promised my mother I wouldn't stop looking. "Mom?" I asked. "Our mother, Leah Madden." The name hurt more than I expected. Leah Madden, my birth mother. A woman whose face I didn't remember, but whose love seemed to have stretched across decades to reach me. Ian reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old photograph, carefully folded into a square. He handed it to me without saying anything. I slowly unfolded it. The photo showed a young woman with curly black hair and kind eyes holding a chubby baby who looked so much like me that my chest ached. There was no mistaking it. The child's birthmark was visible on her bare shoulder, plain as day. Tears blurred my eyes. I brushed them away roughly. "She never gave up," Finn said, his voice hoarse. "She hired private investigators. She posted flyers even when people told her it was hopeless. She moved towns just to hunt for the smallest tip. Every birthday she baked you a cake and lit a candle. 'If you could feel my love,' she said. 'Her from wherever you are, maybe it will bring you home.'" I pressed the photo to my heart, feeling the weight of every missed birthday, every empty chair at the dinner table that I didn't know was waiting for me. "She died 2 years ago," Finn said. "But I kept looking. I couldn't stop. I have to find you for both of us." The pain hit me like a punch. Not just for Leah, but for all the stolen years, all the memories we could have had. Life ripped apart before it began. "If only I could meet her," I whispered. "You will," Finn said. "I have her diary, the letters she wrote to you. She knew she would find you. She just ran out of time." I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of those words seep into the rough places inside me. The truck stopped on a small road that led to a wide field that stretched toward the horizon. Wildflowers dotted the grass, the sun hovered just above the hills, tinting the sky orange and yellow. Finn turned off the engine and we sat in silence. "You're not alone anymore, Catalia," he said. "You've never been alone." The truth enveloped me, like a shield. I had spent 30 years believing that love was conditional, that attention had to be earned, that being seen was a privilege reserved for the lucky few. And yet here was proof that love could be unconditional, fierce, relentless, that I had been wanted all along, even if I didn't know it. I leaned back in my old chair, the photo still pressed tightly to my chest, and allowed myself to believe that perhaps for once I was where I was supposed to be. Not invisible, not forgotten, but found. The sun was setting, painting the sky deeper shades of gold and red. Catalia and I sat on the hood of his truck, our legs dangling over the edge, a quiet comfort between us. I traced the edges of the photo with my fingertips, memorizing every curve of my mother's face, every shadow of the little girl I had been. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy. It was steady, like a heartbeat, a different kind of silence than the one I'd grown up with. This silence was understanding. It didn't demand anything. It simply left me alone. I tilted my head back, watching the first stars dot the sky. "Now what?" I asked finally, my voice steady. Finn smiled, a real, unguarded smile, softening the sharp lines of his face. "Now let's start over," he said. "At your pace, whatever you want." The simplicity of it made my chest ache. No demands, no expectations, just an open road and the chance to walk it on my own. Finn pulled out his phone and scrolled for a second before handing it to me. A photo filled the screen. A small house with peeling paint and a bright blue door. A garden filled with sunflowers and tomatoes. The two dogs lay on the porch like kings. "Our place," he said. "Yours if you want it." Tears welled up again, but this time they came from something different, something softer. I handed the phone back, my hands shaking. "You wanted it," I said. For 30 years I had lived as a guest in my life, waiting for scraps of approval that never came. I had made myself smaller, quieter, more easily ignored. But standing on the brink of this new beginning, I realized I didn't have to be that girl anymore. I was chosen. I was found. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My thumb scrolled through Tessa's contacts before I pressed call. She picked up immediately. "Catalia, are you okay?" I saw the posts. People were saying crazy things. I laughed. A real laugh that opened something inside me. "I'm okay," I said. "Better than okay. Today I found my real family." There was a pause, and her voice was warm and fiercely loyal. "I always knew you were meant for something bigger than them. I just needed a little help finding it," I said, glancing at Finn, who grinned and shrugged as if it was no big deal, as if he hadn't just pulled me out of the wreckage of my life. We hung up after a few minutes, promising to see each other again soon. I put the phone down and looked out at the field, the stars multiplying by the second. "I used to think love had to be earned," I said quietly. "If I just worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, maybe someday they would see me." Finn shook his head. "That's not love," he said. "It's control." The words seeped into me like seeds, finding cracks I didn't even know were there. They made me feel like I was too much and not enough at the same time. "All my life," I said. "You were never the problem," Finn said. "They were the problem." The puzzle finally clicked into place. I had spent too much time blaming myself, comparing myself to impossible standards set by people who loved only the version of me they could control. I had never been broken. I had been stolen. I stood on the hood of the truck, arms outstretched toward the endless sky. I breathed in the cool night air, the scent of wildflowers and open space, and let it fill every corner of me. "I'm not going back," I said. "Good," Finn said, laughing because we had more birthdays to make up. I climbed down and leaned against the truck, feeling grounded in a way I had never felt before. I wasn't someone's afterthought. I wasn't a second choice. I was Catalia Cole Madden, daughter, sister, survivor, and I was finally free. As we drove away, I looked back at the town that had tried to imprison me one last time from above and smiled. The town had lost its power over me. Home was no longer a place. It was not the walls I had grown up within or the people I had spent so much time trying to please. Home was a feeling. Home was knowing that you were wanted without having to shrink to fit the expectations of others. Home was sitting next to a brother who would never give up on you. Watching the stars light the path you were finally ready to follow. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I was going. If this story touched you the way it changed me, take a moment to think about the people in your life who always saw you even when you felt invisible. Family is more than just the people who raised you. It's the person who chooses you, the person who fights for you, the person who reminds you that you are never too much and never not enough. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. If you felt something while watching, please like this video, share it with someone who might need a reminder that they are never truly alone. I would love to hear your thoughts, stories, or just reactions. So please leave a comment below. I read them all. And if you want to hear more true stories of resilience, love, and finding your way home, make sure you subscribe to the channel. There is so much more to come, and I would be honored to have you join me on this journey. See you in the future.